The words pierced the chandelier's radiance like glass, breaking under pressure. "Hey, Blackie, serve!" For an instant, the West Haven Grand Ballroom stilled, then burst into sudden, high, eager laughter that ricocheted off the highly polished marble floors. But Danielle Brooks did not move. She remained firm at the side of the champagne tower, dressed in an understated ivory gown. No sequins, no diamonds, no flashing badge of power or money. Only her, calm, unfazed. She lifted her phone to her ear, her gaze fixed on the woman pointing at her from across the room. Standing behind that woman stood a half-circle of men in fitted tuxedos, sneering as if this was some kind of game. One of them snapped his fingers, calling her like staff. "Before we go any further, tell me, where are you watching from? Leave your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit that like button and subscribe. These stories count, and we're happy you're here. Now, let's return to Danielle." Her low, measured tone poured onto the phone. "It's happening. Cancel the $900 million deal?" The laughter snapped, and it wavered just a fraction of an inch. They didn't catch the words, but they saw her poise. The way she stood. Not like someone cornered, but like someone with all the time in the world. "Which catering service are you representing?" One of the tall men yelled out, champagne flute held high. "If you're quick, we'll even tip." The woman next to him leaned forward, lips twisting. "Sweetheart, this is an investor-only event." The ballroom music continued, but the atmosphere itself changed. Eyes swiveled. A photographer stopped in mid-shot. In front of the stage, a young journalist respectfully withdrew her phone from her purse, her camera capturing Danielle between rows of crystal glasses. Danielle's lips twisted just a little. Not a smile, but a signal. She knew this already, arrogance masquerading as courtesy. At 28, she'd been walked out of a boardroom she'd been set to chair because her name was not familiar. At 34, she'd been confused for her own assistant during the middle of a worldwide purchase. "Security!" The tall man yelled louder this time. At the door, a uniformed guard glanced up, bewildered. The group's matriarch, pearl necklace shining, eyes as cold as steel, yanked Danielle's event pass and tore it apart. The tearing was loud enough to cut through the quartet's music in the corner. "Get her out!" Danielle didn't budge. Her phone remained to her ear, her voice soft, in control. Priority one. Across the room, the reporter's hold on her phone grew tight. She didn't know the ivory-clad woman, but she knew that look. The kind of stare that didn't have to scream to take over the room. The kind that could switch everything in a heartbeat. The chandelier's glow felt colder now, harsh, highlighting every sneer and every judgment. The group in tuxedos hadn't budged, but their voices filled the space like they owned the air. "Which table hired you?" The tall man repeated, louder, sharper. It wasn't a question. It was an order. "You're holding up service," the pearl necklace woman added. "People are waiting." Danielle's gaze never wavered from theirs. Her stance changed fractionally, relaxed, measured. Her cell phone still held to her ear. By the stage, reporter Allison Reeves adjusted her camera upward. The red record dot came to life. She wasn't merely watching anymore. She was recording. A passing waiter braked, jaw clenching as he glanced from Danielle to the overdressed audience. He said nothing, but he noticed. The pearl necklace matriarch moved in, her heels clicking on the marble like hard punctuation. "Sweetheart, this is a serious investors' event." "See her out," she instructed, gesturing to the guard. The guard hesitated, torn between policy and prejudice. Danielle saw. She always saw the hesitation, the same one she'd witnessed years earlier when a concierge had attempted to deny her the penthouse she'd already reserved. Finally, the guard moved closer. "Ma'am, I'll need to see your credentials." "They're gone," Danielle replied, nodding at the torn pass in Pearl Necklace's hand. The reporter zoomed in, catching the woman clutching the shredded paper like a trophy. Pearl Necklace smirked. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." Danielle lowered her phone just enough for her voice to echo across the room. "You already chose hard." Then she raised it again. "Move the capital to Harlow. Don't wait for the signing, Joel." The ballroom shifted. A ripple of gasps, whispers racing from guest to guest. "Did she say Harlow?" A man in gray whispered to his wife. The tall man laughed. "Is this some kind of stunt? You think we'll fall for a bluff?" Danielle's eyes remained steady. "No bluff, just business." That's when the young reporter Allison came forward, her voice firm and clear. "For the record, she was invited. I saw her name on the list of investors this afternoon." The tall man spat a laugh. You must have misread it. I didn't, Allison said with authority, holding up her phone. And I'm not alone who saw it. From across the circle of accusers, another voice cut in, a young catering aide juggling a tray of fizzy water. She's saying the truth, he whispered. The pearl necklace woman's smile wavered for just a breath. Danielle saw it. Everyone did. She let the silence linger for another beat before she spoke softly into her phone. Phase 2 is underway. The guard stopped mid-step. He didn't know what Phase 2 was, but the determination in Danielle's voice made it explicit. It wasn't going to do anything for the ones who had called him. The air inside the ballroom thickened, heavy, like the tense quiet before a storm knows precisely where to erupt. The string quartet continued in the distance, but the music seemed detached now, like it had belonged to a different evening altogether. The matriarch wearing the pearl necklace stepped forward, her scent pungent, her words audible to the tables around her. Individuals such as yourself always attempt to take a place where you do not belong. Danielle did not even flinch. The tall man seized his chance. With exaggerated slowness, he pulled an event pass from his pocket, someone else's, and held it out mockingly. Here, maybe this one will match the story you're selling. Then he tore it in half, letting the shredded paper float to the marble like cruel confetti. Gasps coursed through the room. The reporter, Allison, was already rounding, steadying her phone, recording every second despite the adrenaline coursing through her fingers. She's stalling for attention, the matriarch announced to the security guard. Take her away. The guard moved forward. Danielle didn't budge. On what grounds? She asked calmly, deliberately. Fraud, the tall man snapped at once. She's impersonating someone she's not, trying to insert herself into a $900 million deal. The figure hung there, a live wire. Strangers at surrounding tables paused in the middle of speaking. A man leaned over his friend and whispered, That's how big the Whitmore deal is. Danielle dropped her phone just far enough that her words sliced cleanly through the room. Confirm complete withdrawal of capital. Redirect to Harlow Group. Alert both legal teams. Someone really choked on champagne. The tall fellow attempted to laugh, but the sound cracked in two. You can't reroute anything. You're nobody here. From behind, the young catering assistant shouted louder now, his voice echoing. She's somebody. You don't call off a $900 million deal unless you own a sizable portion of it. The matriarch turned on him, as hard as steel. Mind your own, boy. But Allison interrupted, her tone hard. Too late. You made it everyone's business the moment you ripped up her pass. The guard hesitated once more, pausing 2 steps away from Danielle. His gaze shifted between the accusers and the increasing crowd of witnesses. Phones went up now, recording openly, red dots shining like small acts of rebellion. Danielle's voice remained low and even. One last time. Are you sure you want me removed? Do it, the matriarch snapped, jerking a nod toward the guard. Do it. The guard stepped another step closer. That's when Danielle moved. Not back, but forward, bridging the space between herself and the group of people who'd been closing in on her since the first insult. The pearl necklace matriarch winced, just a little, but enough that every eye watching could detect it. Danielle did not yell, but each word was fraught with emotion. You just said the wrong woman doesn't belong in the room she paid for. The storm broke. The ballroom wasn't buzzing any longer, it was vibrating. Every whisper, every glance raced like electricity through the space, fueling something greater than anyone could name. Danielle gripped her phone firmly, gaze fixed on the matriarch. Proceed to Phase 3, she said. Her chief of staff, Rebecca, replied briskly on the other end. Understood. Legal is on the line. Capital transfer in progress. The tall man attempted to laugh, but it sounded brittle. Phase 3? What is this, some game? Danielle's eyes drifted over to him for the first time. Not a game. An audit. The words did not hit like a punch. They fell like a filing cabinet coming down, heavy, decisive, inescapable. From the side, Allison's voice intervened, crisp and unafraid. If she's bluffing, why are you all nervous? Her camera picked up both Danielle and the group of accusers in the same shot. This woman is attempting to embarrass my family at a public gathering, the pearl necklace mother snapped. Danielle's response was gentle but crushing. No, I'm just letting your behavior speak louder than I ever could. The guard shifted uncomfortably. He had watched staged stunts before, but this wasn't one of them. Something here was falling apart, and it wasn't in Danielle's hands. By the champagne tower, the young catering server whispered to another waiter, "She's got this all under control. Look at her. She hasn't taken a step unless she wanted to." Rebecca's voice came back in Danielle's ear. "Corporate has tagged the Whitmore family portfolio for violation of good faith in negotiations. Do you need me to bring in Harlow's team at this point?" Danielle's eyes scanned the room. More phones were taping now, some discreetly, others brazenly. "Yes," she said, her voice firm, her tone absolute. "Make it public." The tall man tried to laugh, but it was forced. "Even if you did have the power, nobody calls off a $900 million deal in the middle of a gala. That's not how the world works." "That's exactly how my world works," Danielle said. The matriarch intervened again, tone slicing as glass. "Do you even have any idea who you're talking to?" "Yes," Danielle said, and this time her smile emerged, weak but unmistakable. "Do you?" That landed, not just with them, but with the onlookers circling closer, their eyes widening as they began piecing the truth together. Allison, the reporter, exhaled audibly. "I think we're all about to find out." The guard hesitated again, trapped between the order he'd been given and the quiet dread that following it would ruin his career. Danielle dropped her phone, her tone steady but tinged with finality, like a verdict to be read. "You've accused me of fraud. You've destroyed my credentials. You've attempted to cut me out of a deal I made. And all the while I've been patient." She took one step closer, closing the distance, constricting the space. "Patience," she said levelly, "is over." Rebecca's voice cut through the phone one last time, crisp and unwavering. "All parties notified. Press statement drafted. You're clear to proceed." Danielle looked straight at the matriarch, then at the tall man, pearls flashing under the chandelier light. "Good," she said softly. "Let's end this." The ballroom was holding its breath. The chandelier leaned in towards her, as if the space itself wished to see better. Phones across the room froze. The quartet reduced tempo, bows in mid-air, suspended in the standoff like everybody else. Danielle moved into the empty room between her and the Whitmore family. Her heels clicking on the marble floor with each step were like a countdown. "For the last 15 minutes, she started, her voice firm, measured, projecting without a microphone. "You've treated me like I came in here accidentally. You've accused me of fraud. You've called security. You've ruined my credentials in front of 200 people. The tall man crossed his arms, attempting a smirk. The matriarch's jaw locked, her fingers paling around her clutch. "And along with all that," Danielle went on, "not once did you find out my name." There was a silence, thick and electric, waiting. Allison's camera caught the very instant Danielle's eyes snapped into focus. All the phones in the room leaned up, red dots burning steady as heartbeats. "I am Danielle Brooks," she declared, her voice rising just enough to cut through the entire ballroom. "CEO of Brooks Global, creator of the very deal you were gloating about tonight. The $900 million Whitmore acquisition you've been gloating about? I built it. I financed it. And I just gave it away to your competitor." The words burst like a controlled explosion. The matriarch blinked, lips parting to object, but no words came. The tall man's arms dropped. Gasps surged through the crowd. Near the back, someone clapped once, sharp and defiant, before others joined. Applause rippled, scattered at first, then swelling, a tide turning in real time. "You're bluffing," the tall man muttered, but his voice had lost its edge. Danielle tilted her head. "Check your phone." It was both challenge and sentence. He hesitated and then drew it out. The blood left his face as he looked at the screen. The matriarch did the same, her trimmed hands shaking. Other guests around them gasped as their alerts flashed. "Whitmore Global loses $900 million. Deal to Harlow Group takes effect immediately." Allison's camera never flinched, capturing the precise moment the matriarch's posture gave way, pearls glinting in the cold chandelier light as her shoulders slumped. The big man stepped away, but there was nowhere to go. "I didn't have to yell," Danielle said into the stunned quiet. "I didn't have to call the media. You did it for me. All I had to do was let you be noticed." The security guard instinctively recoiled, the divide between responsibility and catastrophe suddenly apparent. At the far end of the ballroom, the young catering staff member whispered to a colleague, "She owns the room now." No one argued. The instant the push notification went out, the mood shattered. Sentences were cut off. Glasses were put down too hastily, crystal clinking like warning bells. The tall man's face reddened, not with pride, but with terror. His jaw visibly worked before he muttered to the matriarch, "We can fix this." "No." She spat on a hiss of breath, eyes flitting to the door. But there was no way out. Not from the dozens of phone lenses fixed directly on her. Allison zoomed in, her figure catching the pearls constricting around the matriarch's neck. On the other side of the room, the catering attendant put down his tray and crossed his arms, a tiny, pleased smile creeping his lips. The corner quartet had ceased playing completely, their instruments laid down beside them. This was the true performance. At last, one of the Whitmore family's own advisors stepped forward, a man wearing a navy suit. His voice trembled. "Danielle, this isn't necessary. We can renegotiate." But Danielle didn't so much as glance toward him. The tall man's phone vibrated in his hand, the ring piercing the stillness like a threat. He looked down and his face went white. 3 missed calls from the Whitmore board chair. A moment later, the matriarch's clutch rang loudly, her ringtone piercing the air like a scold. She didn't have the courage to answer. Across the room, their advisor in the navy suit moved aside, phone to his ear, his low voice revealing distress. Without hearing the words, it was clear the truth. Damage control had already started and was already failing. Everything was captured by Allison's camera, the urgent texts, the tense postures, the tiny fissures of panic. Her subdued monologue rode with her into her mic. "The family is disintegrating in real time." Guests previously huddled around the Whitmores mere moments ago now hovered at a distance, jumping ship with measured, cautious steps. A pair close to the champagne tower didn't even hesitate to conclude their conversation. They just turned in mid-sentence and joined the clamoring crowd around Danielle, their very posture declaring where loyalties now lay. The matriarch reached for the tall man's arm, fraying. "We must go to the car," she muttered frantically. "Not yet," he snarled under his breath, staring at Danielle's back. But when he looked up, he found that half the investors in the room avoided eye contact. The social fabric was dissolving before his very eyes. Even the quartet, who had gone silent upon the reveal, started quietly disassembling their instruments, indicating what everyone already knew: the gala was finished. The party ended the moment Danielle stepped onto the floor. A catering staffer and another server stood by, close to them, looking on. The staffer leaned in and whispered in conclusion, "They're radioactive now. Nobody's going to be caught shaking their hands." He wasn't wrong. The Whitmore inner circle was imploding. Advisors, allies, and handlers clustered in isolated twos, wildly typing messages that wailed of desperation and panic. A PR woman stormed in from the corridor, her clenched jaw giving away the blaze she was about to face. She flashed a tablet at the tall guy, and whatever figures or headlines were lighting it back at him, they caused him to mutter curses under his breath. Meanwhile, at the other end of the ballroom, Rebecca, Danielle's calm chief of staff, was having a whispered conversation with Harlow Group executives. They leaned into each other, relaxed and almost relaxed. Smiles creased their faces. Documents passed between them. The message was as transparent as glass. Power had already moved, and it was not moving back. The matriarch snapped, her voice shaking with rage and terror. "She's ruined us in front of everyone." The tall man didn't have an answer. His eyes were glued to Allison, still keeping her camera fixed like a beam of light they could not avoid. And then it arrived, the noise that hit harder than speech. Chairs pulled back, one by one, as people stood and moved away. Not to pursue Danielle, but to leave the Whitmores in their entirety. Their kingdom was contracting in living color, the once-packed ballroom ebbing around them until the majesty seemed tawdry, pearls and tuxedos mere play garb from a production that had already fallen. Danielle didn't hurry. She didn't need to. Each step she took towards the doors was slow, measured, deliberate, allowing the Whitmores time to choke in their fall. Midway to the doors, Rebecca blocked her path with a slender tablet. "Every Harlow contract is signed," she said softly. "And at your behest, Whitmore's privileges in the Brooks Global Investor Portal have been removed." Danielle didn't even look at the screen. "Good. Have every supplier and vendor in our network receive the memo by midnight." Rebecca's hands flew, sealing orders, while behind them the Whitmore's empire fell apart quietly. Rebecca clicked through the drafts. Drafting at the moment. "You want me to CC their legal?" "Buried them in it," Danielle answered immediately. The tall male, who remained locked in place across the room, received the full weight of that moment and stumbled for purchase. "You can't exclude us from it. We have contracts," he complained. "Respect-based agreements," Danielle remarked, angling herself barely enough to be heard. "You nullified that clause before tonight ever started." A shiver ran through the rest of the guests, differing amounts of both awe and wariness. One of them whispered, "She's freezing them out completely." Rebecca's tablet beeped. "Done. Vendor notices sent. Logins have been disabled." "Good," Danielle replied. "And release the same to the media. Cast it as a values choice. Let's make it absolutely clear we don't do business with individuals who belittle others in public." In the corner of the ballroom, Allison observed Rebecca press send, the tap that would resound for years. The matriarch's voice broke. "This is vindictive." "No," Danielle replied, confronting her head-on. "This is accountability leadership. If you believe it's tough, consider how it felt to be informed that I did not fit in the deal I structured." A server hurried by. Danielle halted him with a gentle hand. "I'll have one," she said, picking up a flute with quiet authority. "And bring another to the Harlow table. Give them congratulations." The Harlow executives tossed back a response, a small pointed toast. The symbolism was clear. The party had officially switched sides. Rebecca leaned close. "Shall I order a portfolio review of Whitmore's portfolio?" "Yeah," Danielle replied quickly. "Flag anything related to our network, then take it down." The big man moved forward reflexively, then halted in the glare of a score of recording phones. One false step now would be streamed online for weeks. Danielle put her flute back on the tray, untouched. "I don't have to drink to this," she murmured. "It wasn't a victory. It was a fix." Alerts came like a wave. Phones beeped and flashed around the room, one by one. Heads dropped across illuminated screens. Allison read off the notice into her live stream. Brooks' global official announcement. Agreement with Whitmore Group canceled immediately because of values breach and public misconduct. "That's confirmation, people," she said to viewers. "This isn't rumor. It's corporate fact." The shift was visible. Harlow executives greeted guests who had just minutes earlier circled the Whitmores. An older investor nudged his friend. "Pull whatever you've got tied up with Whitmore before Monday." The friend was already drafting an email. A PR agent hustled in, urgent and pale. "Cancel tomorrow's press conference. Don't reschedule. We're in salvage mode." The catering staff member who'd had the guts to speak out before went by Allison, whispering, "Watching a building fall in slow motion." Cameras panned to catch the fallout. The Whitmore Group dwindling, advisors dispersing, the matriarch looking down at the floor. Danielle, on the other hand, whispered softly to Rebecca by the door, "No theatrics, just sharp instructions." Guests came forward hesitantly, proffering cards and allegiances. She took some, refused others. Each meeting had an evident subtext. Power was realigning, and she was deciding where it fell. A balcony photographer recorded the action at wide angle, the tables emptying on one side, the crowd swelling on the other side around Danielle. It was a picture that would play past headlines, a map of influence in movement. When Danielle took her last walk towards the door, the Whitmores were being deleted in real time, trending not for a win, but for a stunning loss. Cut to Brooks Global's boardroom. No chandeliers anymore, just glass walls, a walnut table stretching down the room, and the cold silence of those who know precisely where they are. Danielle sat at the head of it, Rebecca to her right, Harlow executives to her left. On a screen flashed market figures. Whitmore Group shares down 14% in the first hour. Jonathan Pierce, Harlow's silver-haired CEO, sat back. "You've already dismantled their 10-year top acquisition. What are you going to do next?" Danielle didn't blink. "We ensure that they can't rebuild on someone else's money. Clamp the network down tighter." Rebecca pushed a paper across the table, a list of common vendors, partners, and subcontractors. "We've contacted 60% already with alternative arrangements. Whitmore is losing supply lines as we talk." "You're seeking a clean break," Jonathan noted. "One that's permanent," Danielle answered. "If they wish to play the long game in our market, they'll need to begin anew, without the leverage or reputation to even compete. A younger Harlow executive monitored press sentiment. If we act quickly, we can position this as an industry standard, zero tolerance for public misconduct. Do it, Danielle instructed. Make it big enough that anyone considering aligning with Whitmore knows the price. Rebecca's phone vibrated. She looked down and permitted herself a tiny smile. Investor Coalition just confirmed they're withdrawing an extra $200 million from Whitmore's last projects. Jonathan laughed. You made them an example overnight. Good, Danielle replied, face impassive. That's where they should be. The city buzzed outside the window as plans came into action. Danielle added one final instruction. Have all pending Whitmore trademark, patent, and licensing agreements reviewed by legal. If it fits our portfolio, purchase it. If not, lock it up so they can't utilize it. Jonathan's eyebrows shot up. Aggressive. Necessary, Danielle answered. The strategy was merciless, accurate, planned, and yet absolutely within the bounds. By the time the gathering was dismissed, Whitmore's options had dwindled until they seemed like a noose growing tighter around his throat. As the Harlow delegation made their exit, Jonathan lingered at the door, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. You know, he said with a laugh, most folks would have gone their way content with a moral win. Danielle rose slowly, gathering her neatly stacked files. Her gaze was steady, her voice sharper than steel. Moral victories are for people chasing applause. I'm after results. With that, she strode toward her office, the glow of the skyline wading through the glass like a silent witness. Outside, the city burned gold beneath the setting sun, its towers catching fire in the fading light. From the corner office of Brooks Global, Danielle stood still, her hands loosely stuffed into the pockets of her pants. The skyline lay out before her like a chessboard, one she had already conquered. A solitary envelope sat on her desk unopened. The Whitmore Group seal shone unambiguously. Rebecca had delivered it an hour before with a whispered, "It's marked urgent." Danielle never bothered to go for it. Instead, she leaned the slightest bit, her own image glinting on the window pane, blending with the city outside. Power wasn't in that letter. Power was to understand what it held without ever opening it up. Apologies for reconsideration. Backhanded apologies replete with diplomacy. Possibly even a last-ditch attempt to purchase back her goodwill. Behind her, a dim TV flashed. News anchors rewound footage of the gala, headlines rolling over the screen. Danielle Brooks breaks new standard for corporate behavior. $900 million deal collapse ignites industry reckoning. The sharp anchor's voice brooked no argument. Humiliation, either in the ballroom or the boardroom, costs always. Danielle raised her coffee, breathing in the steam and then taking a deliberate, slow sip. Outside the glass, the city moved forward, cars, lights, another day becoming night. But for the Whitmores, time stood still. Her phone vibrated. Jonathan Pierce's message flashed across the screen. Vendor lockout successful. Trademark purchase in process. They won't get over this. Danielle texted back 2 brief words, just like they'd planned. Then she stood there observing the light of the city change, allowing the quiet to fall across the room like velvet. Her thoughts flashed back to the ripped event pass, the self-satisfied smile, the demand for security. And then, to that instant, the crowd had parted to let her through. The applause that had erupted, not because she had commanded it, but because they knew what could not be denied. Setting her cup aside, she finally lifted the Whitmore envelope. Calmly, she fed it into the shredder. The blades hummed, ribbons of paper falling like defeated banners. Rebecca stepped in just as the last shred disappeared. The press is asking if you'll make a statement tomorrow. Danielle shook her head with quiet finality. The statement's already been made. Outside, the dying light of day caressed the tallest tower in view, the one topped with Brooks Global's moniker. In the deepening evening, it shone unwavering, unmissable. Danielle Brooks smiled to herself. Not at the win-wins were anticipated, but at the unshakable fact that she'd never had to establish that she was worthy to be in the room. She hadn't merely taken a seat at the table. She'd constructed the table.